Well, good morning, everybody. I accidentally sprained or strained my lower back on Monday, so if I seem stiff, that's why. But it's not bad. Well, I'm going to start us off in Exodus chapter 40, and we're going to read about the tabernacle, the tent that Moses set up, and we're going to look into how that teaches us something about our relationship with God and what we can aspire to and what we can aim for in our relationship with God. So I'm going to read in Exodus 40, starting in 18. Moses set up the dwelling. He laid out its bases. He set up its boards, inserted its bars, raised up its posts. He spread the tent out over the dwelling, and he put the covering of the tent over it, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. He took the covenant document and placed it inside the chest. He put the poles on the chest, and he set the cover on top of the chest. He brought the chest into the dwelling. He set up the veil as a screen to hide from view the chest containing the covenant, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. He placed the table in the meeting tent on the north side of the dwelling outside the veil. He set the bread in its proper place on the table in the Lord's presence, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. He put the lampstand in the meeting tent opposite the table on the south side of the dwelling. He set up the lamps in the Lord's presence, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. He put the gold altar in the meeting tent in front of the veil. He burned sweet-smelling incense on it, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. He also set up the screen at the entrance to the dwelling. He placed the altar for entirely burned offerings at the entrance to the meeting tent dwelling. He offered the entirely burned offering and the grain offering on it, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. He put the wash basin between the meeting tent and the altar and put water in it for washing. Moses, Aaron, and his sons used it to wash their hands and their feet. Whenever they went into the meeting tent and whenever they approached the altar, they washed themselves, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. He set up the courtyard around the dwelling and the altar, and he hung up the screen at the courtyard's gate. When Moses had finished all the work, the cloud covered the meeting tent, and the Lord's glorious presence filled the dwelling. Moses couldn't enter the meeting tent because the cloud had settled on it, and the Lord's glorious presence filled the dwelling. Amen. I want you to think about this thought. I was thinking about this, and it was kind of blowing my mind a little bit. Whatever you ask for in prayer, whatever you ask of God, it will never be greater than God Himself. Think about this. Whatever you ask for, because we go to God and we want things, right? We want things. But think about this. Whatever we could possibly ask of Him, it would not be better than Him. Did that just blow your mind? Because it blew my mind. It's like, here I am asking for all this stuff and asking him to do all these things. And He's better than any of it. And to forget that would be like, I don't know, it'd be like running into the most interesting man in the world and asking him for directions to the bank or something like that. It's like, what a missed opportunity, right? He's the most interesting man in the world. We should be asking him out, to have a cup of coffee or something like that. And yet all we want from God is kind of like this quick, God, I need this, God, I need that. by the way, and can you tell me how to do this? Can you tell me how to do that? We're always asking and wanting things from God. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to ask things of God. But the plan of the tabernacle, to me, it shows me that there's more, and there's better, and there's something deeper than that that's available for you and me in our relationship with God. So let's think about the tabernacle for a little bit. There are three main sections to the tabernacle. And the first section was called the courtyard. It was the largest area. And in the courtyard, it was surrounded by this barrier, a barrier of cloth that was on stands. There was no roof. It was just a wall of cloth that surrounded the entire area. And you can get into the courtyard through this little, through these curtains on the east side. And anybody that was an Israelite in good standing could enter and worship there. In the courtyard, there was the altar for burned offerings. And that was where you took your animals. That's where you offered your sacrifices, and you worshiped and you prayed. The whole nation was welcome to come into the courtyard. In fact, this building is similarly designed, in a sense, to that tabernacle. If you go to a lot of cathedrals, they're designed that way. Even a lot of Jewish synagogues are designed that way. But let's look at even this building and see how it relates. All right, so don't mind me, I'm just passing through. Going to the back here, some of you guys don't know what this is called in church tradition. This is called the narthex. Hi guys. This is the narthex. This is not traditionally part of the church. All right? As soon as I enter these doors, I'm in the church. I step back, I'm not in the church. The narthex was traditionally built for penitents, people who were not members, people who had sinned a lot the night before, such as, or people with babies. And they don't want to go into the service, but they want to hear what's going on, and so they hang out in the narthex, okay? Just imagine that I'm a Jewish person in the time of Moses. If I'm an average Jewish person, this is as far as I will ever get inside the church. This is as far as I'll ever get. All my prayers, all my worship, all my sacrifice, it all happens out here. Okay? So just think about that. You're a good Jewish person. You're your whole life you want to worship God, but that's as far as you've ever gone to church. You've never even seen this place. You've never even seen this place. It's beautiful in here, by the way, in the tabernacle. A lot of gold, a lot of purple, red yarn. It's beautiful in here, but you've never seen it. The only people that are allowed in this section right here, this section would have the golden altar of incense, the table of the bread of the presence. It would have the golden lampstands. This section right here would be only for the priests, descendants of Aaron, who were flawless. Those were the only human beings that were allowed in this section, what we would know as the church today. So can you imagine? Your whole life you live as a Jew and you've never gone inside of the church. You've just seen it from a distance. And you wonder what goes on in there, and you wonder what it looks like in there. But you've never even been allowed to look. You get too close, you die. It was the job of the priests to guard the tabernacle. And so the average person like you and I would not even be able to set foot in the church. But we can enjoy that place in the courtyard and worship and lift up our song to God and lift up our prayers to God. To me, the courtyard is kind of the place that I think of as the place where you believe in God and you know to pray, you know to ask God for things. and your relationship with God is kind of at a distance, but you trust in Him. And so you pray, you ask. But in some ways, your relationship with God could look at times like a relationship with a vending machine. All right? You put prayers in, and you get the answered prayer out. And that's the extent of your relationship with God. And many of us live our lives in the courtyard. Many of us only know God as an ever-present help in time of need, which is great. But many of us don't know God any more than that. God is the person up there who has all the power, who can help me when I need help, who can provide things when I need these things. And that's it. When you get into the tabernacle proper, you come where the priests are. And what the priests do is they minister before God. They make sure that there's fresh bread on that table every day. Every single day, there's a fresh loaf of bread. They make sure that the incense, which signifies the prayers of the people, is always burning. This is very sweet-smelling, aromatic, fragrant incense. They make sure that the lamps with the different candlesticks or oil lamps, they make sure that those are trimmed and that they never go out. These lamps are on night and day. A priest might have to sleep there to make sure, or take the night shift to make sure it doesn't burn out in the middle of the night. And they're just constantly in the tabernacle ministering before God. Sometimes offering atonement, sprinkling blood at times at different seasons. But in this place, this is a place of deeper intimacy than the courtyard. Here, you're able to minister to God, and you're also able to not only pray to God, but sometimes you could even hear His voice. You know that the prophet Samuel, where did he begin to hear God's voice? It was in the tabernacle. As he was ministering before the Lord, he started hearing God speak to him. And so in this place, in the tabernacle proper, our relationship with God might look a little bit more like a relationship, not with the vending machine, but with maybe like a very good employer, where God has given us instruction and we're doing the things that He wants us to do. And we want to know, God, what do you want us to do? And we have a dialogue with Him. You start knowing His will, but at the same time, the focus is more on what you're doing for Him. Now, in the front of this section, there would have been a curtain or a veil. And past that curtain, only one man in the entire nation was allowed to enter, and that was the high priest. And he could only go in once a year. And so nobody else except him has seen what it looks like in there. So you go in. So he would go in once a year on the Day of Atonement, and there would be this gorgeous gold-covered ark chest. And inside the ark are the Ten Commandments, the promises of God. The promises of God and His people. The contract of the relationship. And in this room, behind the curtain, is where they believed God's presence was. That God dwelled here with the ark, the chest of the covenant. So you're in God's presence when you're in this place. Now, God is everywhere. But as we can see, sometimes He can be present more powerfully and tangibly than at other times. In fact, after Moses sets up the tabernacle, it says, the cloud covered the meeting tent, and the Lord's glorious presence filled the dwelling. and Moses couldn't even enter the meeting tent. So this tent, this tabernacle, was where God met with the Israelites. Notice it's called the meeting tent. It's not called the ministry tent or the worship tent. It's the meeting tent. It's a place where God met with his people. And for me, this area up here, it's called the most holy place. Where you guys are sitting would have been the holy place, and where I'm standing here would have been called the most holy place. To me, when you get to this place in your relationship with God, it's the place of deepest intimacy with God. It's a place of deepest intimacy with God. It's not so much about the ministry anymore or what you do for God. It's simply when you are able to enjoy being with him. It's not so much where you're asking him for things, but you're simply in awe of his presence. And you enjoy him. And a lot of times you don't even need to say anything. You ever get into a conversation with somebody you like, and you ever get to that awkward point where the conversation is basically done, but you still have to think of things to say to kind of wind it down? So you start talking about casual things, and then you wind it down, and eventually you have nothing more to say. And so you're like, all right, well, oh, look at that. I got that thing, It's, oh, right, that thing. Yeah, I got a thing too. We'll see you next time. And you part ways. But that doesn't really, you can have a relationship with somebody, for example, a significant other, a spouse, family member, a really good friend, where you can get to that point where you have nothing more to say, and you don't leave. That's when you know you're close, right? When you get to the point where, all right, I have nothing more to say to you, dude. And you just sit there. All right, you want to go somewhere else? I have a lot of those friends because I'm an introvert and a lot of my friends are introverts. So we run out of things like in 3 minutes. It's like, hey, what's up? Yeah. Like I met with guys that I haven't seen in like 3 years. And I think we ran out of stuff by 5 minutes. We had a little bit more to say. But, after 3 years we caught up. And it was just like, all right. And when you can be comfortable with that, that's when you know you're close. When you can sit next to your wife or your husband and, there's no pressure to say anything. You're just enjoying being together. That's when you know you're close. When the conversation ends and you feel like you have to get away from this person, you guys aren't that close. But that's true of God as well. The tabernacle, to me, it's almost like a progression in prayer or our relationship with God. At first you come to God, you have all these things you need. God, I need this, and I need this. Can you do this for me? And that's good. It's good to expect things of God. He loves that. He loves to give good gifts to his children. But have you ever moved beyond that point and decided, you know what, I want to actually be led by him to do things for him in his name? God, what should I do about this? When you move into the tabernacle, I feel like you're ready to listen to God. And God, I want you to talk to me about what can I do for this friend of mine that's going through this? What can I do? I'm about to teach a Bible study or lead a small group, or I have a ministry with children or with outreach, and what can we do, God? And many of us get to that place and then we stop. We leave after we're done with that conversation. But have you ever stayed in that place of prayer, in that place of relating to God until you've run out of things to say? Have you ever prayed until you've run out of things to say and kept praying? That's the time. A lot of us think we're done when we run out of things to pray. But no, that's when it gets good. I want to encourage you. If you pray this week and you get to the end of everything that you want to say, I want to encourage you to stay there and to rest in His presence and be in His presence, enjoy His presence. I'm telling you, that's where the relationship really takes off. That's when your love for God just starts exploding. That's where your character starts getting formed. He starts shaping you and molding you and dealing with sins that you might not be able to conquer in your natural self, but that through His Spirit and His presence, His glory begins to overwhelm the power of that sin in your life, and you start breaking free. It's where you fall in love with God. Some of you guys have been in love, right? Some of you have celebrated your relationship this past Thursday. But do you remember the time when you had to be with that person every waking moment? And how absolutely disgusting it is to everybody else around you? How pitiful you look, that you have to skip class and be absent from work. You just want to be with that person all the time. You're calling them when you're not with them. You're texting them. And it's just ridiculous how much you want to be with that person. That's how it can be, and that's how I think it should be with us and God. To get to that place of love and intimacy with the Father. And nobody told you to do it. Nobody forced you to do it, right? Nobody forced you to fall in love. You can't quantify it. There's no scientific way to 100% predict how that will happen or with whom. You just get to know that person and bam, you want to be with them all the time. I want to encourage you that as you move past the veil, I want to tell you something, that in Jesus Christ, that veil, that curtain that separates the holy place from the most holy place, that curtain was torn. It says in Mark 15:37, it says, "But Jesus let out a loud cry and died. The curtain of the sanctuary was torn in two from top to bottom." You no longer have restricted access to God the Father. You have total access to God the Father. You can come in as far as you want. You can come in as far as you want. Many of us are perfectly happy to be in the narthex, the courtyard. It's not a bad place to be. You're worshiping God. You believe in God. Some of us have discovered that we can hear from God, that we can serve God, that we can have a deeper relationship with Him than just asking Him for things. That's a great place to be. But I want to tell you that there's a deeper place. The holy place, the most holy place, is open and available for you. It's as if God says, it's significant that the curtain was torn from top to bottom, because it's as if God was doing it. It's as if God was tearing it in half and saying, the deepest place of intimacy is open to you, my children. Come in. And there He waits. And it's up to you how far you want to go. It's up to you how far you want to go. Some of you are thinking, well, why would I want to go? Why would I want to go in here? What's the purpose of going in there? That's kind of like asking, as you're preparing to take your significant other out for a date on Valentine's Day. That's kind of like asking, so what's the purpose of this date tonight? Why do I want to do that? Did any of you guys ask that question before you went out on Thursday? Like, honey, what's the goal here of this excursion? What are we trying to accomplish? I need to know because I need to ready myself for that purpose. No, it's, if you said that to your wife, you hopefully got a purse upside the side of your head, and your wife said, no, dummy, we're going out because we love each other. Come on, we want to be together. So, there's no purpose other than we just want to be with God. In that place of intimacy with God, we enjoy Him. We enjoy perfect love, His perfect love for us. We enjoy His glory, His majesty, His character, His majesty, His everything, that everything God is, we were meant to be in relationship with. I want you to pray into that and taste that and see what that's like. Because God really is better than anything you could ask for. Whatever it is, think of the most amazing, fabulous thing that you could possibly ask for. If He would give you anything you wanted right now, whether it be wealth or fame or anything that you want, whatever it is you could ask for, whether it be health, even if it was to raise somebody from the dead, whatever you could possibly ask for, He's better than that. He's better than that. When you get to that place, that's when your faith goes so deep, it can survive any storm. It can survive any disappointment. Some of us, when we get rocked by a negative situation in our lives, we get so disappointed with God that we abandon Him. It's important to get to this place, the most holy place, because when God Himself is your prize, nothing else you lose will offset the joy you have with Him. Nothing else that disappoints you in life can ruin the satisfaction you find in Him. And that's where you see people that can lose everything. Because Christians can lose things. Christians lose loved ones. Christians suffer. But when you see somebody who's lost everything and yet is able to love and praise God, that's when you know that that person has found that God is the prize, that God Himself is the reward, that God Himself is the end and not just a means to an end. And that's where He wants us all to be. When we get to that place with Him, life can do whatever it wants to us. But it won't take away our joy. It won't take away our peace. It won't take away our strength, our power. Because all of that is in the person of God, not just in the things He does for you. So I want to invite us, let's have a time of prayer. I want to invite us to come into that place. And I know that Jane invited a lot of you guys before, but many of you didn't come because you're probably afraid of the space. You're afraid of the intimacy. But I want to invite you again to actually come to this area right in front. If you want to fill up this area here on the stage. And let's not only be together, but have it be a sign that, Lord, we want to enter the holy space, the most holy space. We want to know what that's like to be in your presence. So I want to invite us. Let's all come up and enjoy God's presence together up here. And actually, if the praise team can come up and play for us. And I want to invite you to pray. Pray through the courtyard. Present your requests before God. Pray through the tabernacle, the holy space. Hear from God. But I really want to challenge you. Try to pray into the most holy place. And just be in His presence as His presence falls. Father, we ask for your glory to fall on this place. As it fell on the tabernacle in the days of Moses, as it fell in the temple in the days of Solomon, as the cloud filled the temple, as the cloud filled the tabernacle, and even the priests were unable to carry on. We ask for your glory. We ask for your presence to fill this sanctuary. That your glory would fall and fill our hearts. That you would open our hearts and our minds and our spirits so that we can see you, God. Take the veil away from our hearts, God. Take the veil away from our understanding. If any of us have a veiled heart, a veiled mind, I pray that you would, as you did in the original, the temple of Herod's temple, I pray that you would reach down from heaven and just tear the veil. In Jesus Christ. We thank you that Jesus, your Son, died to pave the way into the sanctuary, into the most holy place. That it's through His blood that washes us, that we can stand before you this morning. God, that this is a privilege. It's not our right because we were in sin, but you have given us the privilege of sons and daughters to stand before you. You've given us the privilege to call on your name. You've given us the privilege to be in your presence and not be consumed, but to live. Spirit, fall on this place. Fall on this place. Let's continue to keep praying. Let's continue to keep enjoying. Just relax. There's no pressure to say anything. If you want to pray, pray. If you want to ask, ask. If you don't know what to say, just enjoy His presence. He's with you. He's with us.